Welcome to Design Build Workshop. Today we're talking about the second building and the factory system on our HL scale layout and all the details that are inside. So you can see in the screens behind me I've got details up, especially the big large flywheel that's in here for driving the rolling mill, and then the overall design behind me, and then of course the building itself is right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove these panels because they're loose. And I left this open so I could be able to put figures inside, so I want to still be able to have access, as well as lighting, so that's still a possibility. But if you can see inside, and I'll do a close-up later, but I detailed the interior of this. Like I said, it's a rolling mill, and it's got one set of rollers driven by a really large flywheel. I have two outfeeds, and if you can see from this view, there are, red hot metal bars that are rolling off, and then back here you can see they're stacked up on the side over there. And like I said, I'll do a close-up later so you can kind of get more of those details. And the only other thing I did as far as this building was concerned was I've got part of a loading dock modeled here, and that's going to go here, and then I have the ramp, which I still need to paint yet. And this hasn't been weathered or anything. This is just the first paint setup, and then once I get everything set, then I'll go ahead and weather everything. And I also modeled kind of a part of the yard where they're going to stack the wrought iron bars that they've been rolling out of this mill. And I took this off of a Pinterest picture, probably think somewhere from the 1920s, and they had this exact setup with these metal pieces that were basically riveted down. And that's where they stacked all the, probably 15 to 20 foot bars. I removed those two top pieces again so you can kind of see more of the detail. And I'll show you the yard piece first. So you can see those pieces there. This is already weathered, so I rusted them, did a little highlight with kind of a silver paint on there. And then the bar stock will probably get weathered a little bit more, maybe add a little bit of rust to it. And then the building itself, try to get really close. So you can see inside. Got the red bars coming off the rolling mill. I've got a little. You can see there's a railing. There's a guard that is around the flywheel. And then we have the reheat oven back there, the rollers, and then the two outfeeds, and then we have the stack material, which is just kind of thrown off to the side instead of working in there. And of course you can see there's a sliding door, the barn door that's on there, and then that's going to be, that stack material will end up being removed out to the yard. And all they did with the loading dock was this just painted brown and then highlighted with some gray dry brushing, so it looks a little mottled. Okay, let's talk about some of the printing strategies here. So the flywheel really only needed to be detailed from the one side because you may not see the back side of this. So this side has rivets. You've got the details of the indentation over here. And of course this is only, this is cut off right here, so it's supposed to be like it's partway underneath the building because that's where like a lot of the driving system is. So it just is cut off right here, so it's glued down to the base, and then it's got that railing surrounding it, so you really can't tell that that just ends the way it does. On the back side, I still have the details of these cutouts. But we don't have any rivet sections on here, and this is so that I could print this flat. And if you'll notice here, these are all radiused. And that's because we were talking about before, when you print something and it's got a hollow in it, and it's got a flat upper part, that's not going to print well. But if you radius it, that'll print just fine. So you do have that detail that you'll see from this side of the building, but you won't have the rivets that you see on this side. So this piece here, top, basically the roof. This is flat. This is all one flat piece. So when it's printed, right, that's just right down against the build plate. but there's little cutouts here, and that's for these girder pieces, or you know, when they come up into this part here, into the cupola, that's where those girder pieces are, and so that's how this fits. So it basically indicates itself in the print or in the build. These roof pieces, these are just printed flat. So the back side is just absolutely flat. So they're printed like this, and that gives me the maximum detail that I can get. The walls were done the same way, and you can see here there's a split because my printer's not big enough to print this as one piece. So there's a divide that's right here, and the same that's right there. So those pieces butt up against each other, and that's how that's done. Same thing, they're printed flat, so the inside wall, you know, is perfectly flat because it was laying down on the build plate. And then we have the girder pieces themselves. So if you look inside, you can see the girders. They go all along through the inside, and that's similar to the other building I had done. And these were done in two pieces, like I had done the other girders for the larger building. So you can see, you know, we've got a line right there, and that's where the two halves come together. And that was for the same reason. I wanted both sides of these to, you know, have detail, right? I didn't want to have a flat side, because then you're going to see this from those two different angles. This is, sorry, I'm spinning this around kind of quick. This is the back side of the flywheel, which doesn't have a whole lot of detail, but I don't think you're going to notice it if you're looking at the building. You're not going to pick that up that much. Now, of course, you could say the same thing, that you're not going to pick up the rivets and stuff that are on this side either. But, you know, I wanted to detail it, so that's what I did. It's a detail of the sliding door. This is just like a board and batten design from the front side. You would have basically a metal piece up here, and then these are the slider pieces. And I've got just like 3 rivet details on there and a simple handle. And the back side is just flat, and for the same reason, so I could print it, you know, against the build plate. You'll notice I've got a slight radius right here. And that's for the same reason that when I'm printing this, you know, I want that kind of to be a smooth transition. Now this was hanging out in the air, right? Not by a lot, but a little bit that was hanging out. So I did have to clean up the back side of that so it would work, you know, fit flat against the end of the building. This is the railing section that goes around the large flywheel. And I designed this so there's really not a lot of overhang detail, but it still looks like a decent railing, kind of like an Art Deco style, just with these oval cutouts. And then, of course, I've got the rivet details as if it was like riveted into the floor. This is the end of there's 2 of these. So the roller has got to be held in by a bearing block, which is what this is. So this has a little bit of detail. We've got some cutouts and some radiuses. And then, of course, riveted here, and that would be glued down, and then that would hold the actual roller, which is right here. And I did these in half. So this was 1/2, and then I printed 2 of these and then glued them together. And then this section goes into the bearing block on either side. And then this didn't come out quite as smoothly as I would like it to have. So I probably needed to make some adjustment on my printer. But because it's small and it's inside the building, it'll be fine. I'm not going to worry about how it looks. This is the top of the roller rack, where the hot steel is going to come off. This is like the out piece. And all I did here was I radiused these top pieces so they were rounded. But once again, they're so small, that detail probably isn't going to show up, and it's way down inside the building. You're not going to see it anyway. And all I did with this was this section here and the other part that goes in the bottom with the rivet detail, that was painted that kind of like weird green color that you see a lot in machinery. And then these were just painted silver, so they would represent like a roller that was constantly being used, so it's always not gonna have any rust or any that kind of thing on it. And that was printed just flat like this. And if you look at the bottom, this and this are on the same plane. So that could print fine without having any kind of hiccups. And you're not going to see this bottom part anyway, so it didn't really need to be a true roller because it's just too small, so you're just not going to see that. And that was it for most of the details of this building. Once again, I printed it where I had the brick that was already modeled, and I made the cutouts for the windows, and then I did the details of the windows, and for this cement details that were on the side, that was all done, added to the brick face. But once again, I didn't have to model every individual brick because I already had it done in one big plate that I basically cut up. And I keep doing that for each building I'm going to make that's a brick building. And we have a little stone detail down here. Not as much as the big building. So this building is, was built after, and the idea that I'm modeling right now is it's the Depression. And this initial building of this was probably done in the late 1800s, maybe even early like 1900. And then, as time went on, they just didn't have as much money, and so the buildings weren't as elaborate. And that's kind of the way I'm going to go with the next two buildings as well, is not have them be as elaborate as the first, and maybe even less so than this one. Of course, over here you can see this was also done with the board and batten, like the sliding door. This was done the same way. So this was painted that kind of green color that I've got for like the wood trim, and that's this upper part of like the cupola top. And then you can see we've got siding here. And then that door is also wood, so that's painted green as well. Thanks again for joining me on Design Build Workshop and our look at the second building in our HL scale layout for the factory. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time.